Yeah, I know. Men Marie, jag tänker att vi startar igång för att vi behöver. So, welcome everyone to this side event on intelligent market design and smart grid. I'm Maria Sandqvist. I'm the executive director of Swedish Smart Grid Forum. We organized this event together with ISGAN. So I have with me here today Karin Widegren, chair of ISGAN. And I also know she has some practical information to give at this beginning. Yes.
Yeah, and also from me, welcome to everybody. This is a jointly organized high-level panel that will continue 1 hour. So, and after the panel is closed, we will have the ISGAN award ceremony. On the web, it's announced. In the program, it's not. But just for your information, when we close the panel, we will continue with the ISGAN award ceremony at 12:30.
Okay, thank you, Karin. So, and with that, I welcome Marie Fossum.
Yes.
Yes, Marie Fossum Stranegård, who's going to lead us through this panel. And she's partnered at Ernst & Young, but have also a long career and professional career within energy and telecom. It's a really interesting background on smart grid, I must say. So, please.
Thank you so much. And before we start with the actual program, let's look a little bit back in history. So, how did we end up in this room, and how did you really work with this policy brief or this paper that you have produced, and what is really the history here?
Yeah, we have had a team with ISGAN, with some central authorities in Sweden, and also with the dialogue internationally, and we made up this policy brief, which you can also get outside here. And so yesterday we had a full day workshop discussing on those very interesting topic and very important issues there. And that was based on this policy brief. And the day before that, on Tuesday, we had an arena in Malmö, also on smart grid, with several different topics discussed there. And the result of that arena you can see here, this beautiful drawing on the wall.
Right, but maybe Albin, you can explain a little bit then. What is this drawing? How will you use it, and how have you produced it?
Yeah, on Tuesday this week we gathered some 200 stakeholders in Malmö on the other side of the strait, and they were experts and also executives from different organizations like regulators and different companies. And this image here is really like a visual journey through this day with some key messages from these organizations to the policy level. So if you look at the right-hand side here, you can see the clear messages from that group. And some things here are that we need to speed up. The industry is ready for some tough sustainability targets. And there is also a lot of bottom-up potential, so we need to utilize that bottom-up potential. And one message there was that we don't need to wait for new regulations. We can do a lot with the existing regulation. But another message was actually, a lot of messages came up related to the regulation, and that it needs to be more flexible. The regulation needs to enable also flexibility. So regulatory sandbox was another notion that I think we will discuss here today as well.
Correct, we will do that. But before we start now with the panel, we will ask the Swedish Minister of, of course, of Energy and Policy Coordination. Is that correct? Okay, you will talk more about that. Mr. Ibrahim Baylan will set the scene now before we start with the panel.
Thank you for that very warm applause. A very spontaneous applause. Good morning to you all. Good morning, Marie.
Good morning. Is it morning?
Well, more or less. Well, at least during this morning we have, in the CEM, we have had very good discussions on some major challenges and opportunities that lies in front of us. One of them, that was our first discussion point, was how to raise the share of renewable energy. The second one is to how to decarbonize our economies. Comparing with the first Clean Energy Ministerial that I was part of in Mexico 2015, there has been a major shift. When we are talking about investments in renewable energy today, we are mostly talking about opportunities. Let me stress that very strong shift. Obviously, we have been talking about investments in renewable energy for a very long time. But previously, it has been a lot about doing the right for the environment. Sometimes because we want to do it, sometimes out of bad conscience. And we have almost, at that time, it was almost always a trade-off with economic growth and jobs. But when I listened to the discussion we had this morning, it was a lot about the opportunities, not only for the environment, the ecology, but also for job creation and economic development. That is the major shift, and I think we need to highlight that. Because we all know what we need to do. We need to meet the challenges that we have when it comes to reaching the targets we set in the Paris Agreement. And we know also that this is something that we need to cooperate on. We don't need to compete, because it is our common challenge. And by working together, we increase the chances to meet this challenge. And I myself, both as a minister for energy in Sweden, as a representative for the Swedish government, I'm totally convinced that this is a natural next step for humanity, to develop our societies, our industries, our economies, and in a way that is much more sustainable than our previous way of life, or in many ways, current way of life. Because in the end, working together will benefit us all, and I think in this sense, the Clean Energy Ministerial is a very useful platform for learning from each other and to share also good practices. You don't always need to find the new solutions, because by meeting like we are doing, you could also see that there is proven technologies, innovations that you could also learn from. That's why I'm very excited to be here today also, because we have gathered here today to receive your input. I want to hear from you on what you believe are the opportunities for speeding up the transformation of the power systems, and specifically, how may we take greater advantage of digitalization and smart grid technologies? Because we all know that there is no one-size-fits-all, but there ought to be general guidelines that can help policymakers and regulators around the world. How can we, with policies and regulations, support market design that pave the way for new solutions? Can we promote markets that support more flexibility, services, and greater customer engagement? From the Swedish perspective, we see that we could benefit from a new international project on this topic. That's something that we would like to discuss with you. And we want to engage with key partners such as the IEA, NREL, private actors, and others that have a lot of experience and knowledge in this field. We will also continue working with some of our closest bilateral partners, such as China and India, on this topic. So, dear friends, welcome all once again. And let's get started, because the next hour will be dedicated to digitalization, market design, and smart grids. And our main objective, our main target is, through this means, to create a system that is totally renewable, totally sustainable, and in the end takes our economies another step forward, our industries another step forward. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's warm here in the room. I hope it's okay. We might be able to open some windows or so, but probably we have to cope with this for an hour or two. But I promise you, you will not be disappointed. We will have a fantastic discussion here now with very interesting people. So I would like to ask the panelists to come up on stage. And let me start with David Turk. Yeah, here is David. Give him a hand. Acting Director, Sustainability Technology Outlook from IEA. Welcome. Doug Arendt, Deputy Associate Lab Director from NREL. Welcome. Valerie-Anne Lunsner, and I know I pronounced that in a bit wrong way, but you are then representing and is the Managing Director of Think Smart Grid from France. Welcome. And Francisco Carranza Sierra, Director on Battery and Energy Service at Nissan Renault. Welcome. And then we have Mr. Yibo Wang, Professor at the Institute of Electrical Engineering of Chinese Academy of Science. Welcome. Really a strong panel, and we have to speak a little bit loud because we don't have too much microphones. Is it okay with the voice for everyone? Looks okay. You are nodding there in the back, so then it looks okay. Super. So some of you know, and we have already said, that we had a workshop yesterday, and it was a long, full day, 3 different items, discussions, topics, and we were spending almost 8 hours inside the room discussing these topics. What I heard during the day was 4 key topics that constantly came back and that we discussed. And the first one was really global versus local. So what should we and what do we need to discuss globally? And what is it that we should do locally? That was one topic. The other one was innovation and incentives. The third one, regulatory sandbox. You can also see that on that fantastic drawing that Albin just presented. We'll come back to that. What is that? How to make sure that we can find new ideas, given that it is very regulated industry. And the fourth one is always with trends, of course. But and trends, what we really discussed there was digitalization, new technologies, new ways of working, new business models. Valerie, you were also present there the entire day, and is that your same key takeaways, or what's really from your perspective? What was the main takeaways from yesterday's discussion?
Some of them are the same one, some are others. First of all, I think I must really congratulate either the Swedish Smart Grids Forum and ISGAN for the excellent work that has been done to prepare all this position, because the paper is very well written and has really served as a very good basis for all the discussion. So it was a very rich and fully collaborative way to work at the image of smart grids.
Good.
So this is the first point. The other one, I think we always must to be in the position to think to the benefits we want to achieve with all this work. And I think it's very important to emphasize and say again what Minister Baylan has said. With these smart grids, we want to contribute to the fight against climate change and also to maintain system reliability and promote the collective use of the grid, which is our good for all Europeans here in Europe, but there are grids everywhere. My main message, my main takeoff. The first one is also about the integration of renewables energy. Smart grids are needed to increase the integration of renewable energy. And there are different ways we can do for that, especially also work on the price of the CO2 ton. This was also one of the things that was said. Second point is flexibility. Flexibility is needed, especially to have more and more renewables energy on the grid. And this energy will be stored, and the storage today costs a lot, but because we will have the possibility to store the renewable energies, this will compensate, and little by little This storage of renewable energy will help a lot. Second point, inside flexibility is a demand response or demand side management. This is already performed in some countries. For example, I can say that in France we have today 2 gigawatts, it's not a lot, of demand side management, but it's planned to be 6 gigawatts in 2025. So little by little we also increase the way we want to deal with this demand side management. And the third one is the blockchain, and the blockchain is linked to the data technologies. These 3 technologies, we can say today they are quite ready. But the real issue is about the market and the market design. So the traditional roles needs to be changed because all the market design today is made for big players, big actors, and it's normal because it has been conceived in order to help for the security of supply. But tomorrow, the needs, the challenges are different. And especially there will be little actors, little players, prosumers, little producers, generators, but also there will be these aggregators. And so we need to make a different place for these actors and so to rethink, to redesign this market design. This is your point, local against global. And the flexibility becomes then a priority. I don't mean that we must leave the security of supply, but the flexibility becomes more and more important. And in order to set it up, first, we need the regulatory changes. But I think that many of our regulators are already smart. Many of them have already been accepting the principle to have sandboxes. I'm not sure it's already written and signed, but I mean, I think that in the head, the change is already here. Well, I must talk about the French one. I do not want to commit for the Swedish one. And I think also lessons can be learned from other projects all over the world. And we need also to share about these lessons in order to be more effective about our system. So these changes must support a transition for a smarter grid. What we can do also is dedicated tariffs. So we've been several times talking about these specific tariffs, dynamic pricing. Sometimes it was also been talked about taxation, how to modify taxation on these tariffs. And these tariffs must be linked to the habits of consumption, favoring virtuous consumer or prosumer. And last point regarding the market design and the role of regulators is also the protection of consumers. These consumers can be either customer, prosumer, and also citizens. So, yeah, I can see that these are my main takeoff.
Yeah.
And
so you can see we really had a full day yesterday based on that summary. And we actually did. Let me come back a little bit to this with market actors. And let me ask you, Mr. Yibo, one. Would you say that there would be a radical change between market actors now due to these upcoming changes?
I would like to say there's many changes by nowadays. And maybe I can introduce something about what happened in China.
Super.
Okay, thank you. So maybe can you translate? Maybe no. So I can speak out loud.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think we can hear you.
So in 2017, the last year, 6.3 trillion kilowatt hours of electricity was consumed in China, and the electricity shares 22% in the energy consumption. So, and the ratio is expected will arise in the future. And although there is no free market in China now, but the trade of electricity is very active and conducted by the government and the power grid company. So it's the situation of China now. On the other hand, 6.3 trillion kilowatt hours of electricity means trillions dollars of electricity market is under development. Yeah, So it's the background, and I think there is three main changes in the role of market players in China. The first one in China, the distribution of electricity resources and the consumption is totally unbalanced in region. More than 60% of power resources located in northwest China, and more than 60% of consumption locates in middle and east of China. So we have to transfer bulk electricity from northwest China to east part of China. So it's a challenge. And the trade of bulk electricity from northwest to east China should supported by the long distance and high voltage transmission technology. Now we have developed the 1000 kV HVAC transmission and plus minus 350 kV VSC HVDC transmission technology. We have developed that, and the demonstration is there. And in the next few years, we will develop the more higher voltage and more longer distance of transmission technology. I think from the technological will such technology will enable the trade between large regions. Between large regions, it's the first wheel. The second wheel is from the renewable energy. It's the same as yourself. Yeah, electricity from PV and wind becomes much cheaper than before. In the first season, this year, the feed-in tariff of PV in China is lower down to 5 US cents per kilowatt hours, and we all believe the grid parity of the PV and wind is coming. So this situation will enable large-scale deployment of PV and wind in consumer side, and now there is no market in consumer in demand side, but the potential of electricity trade between PV owner and a grid company, PV owner and consumer, and among the prosumers, I think there has the potential. The potential is appeared there. Yeah, appears. So in China now, we also trying to build up some demonstration to trading platform to enable free trade of electricity in demand side, including maybe somebody hear about that in Tulufan County. It's a northwest China. It's a small county, and we do a lot of research and demonstration of freely trade of electricity there. So the third point is, I think microgrid or micro energy grid is a very important factor to involve new business models. And in China, the owner of microgrid could be the third party role besides of grid company and the consumer, and they can invest a microgrid and get electricity or energy charge from the consumer and pay for the grid company, and he get the difference charge difference for profit. So the problem is the ledger relationship between the owner and the power grid is still not clear, and there's also many policy absent to support this new business model. So from technological view, each microgrid is different from each other. yeah, different from energy source, skill, consumer requirement. There are many differences. So there are still many technologies needs to developed in order to support design, integrate, or operating a microgrid in a reasonable way. So it's the third point. And finally, from the international collaboration, we have very good work group under Mission Innovation that calls Mission Innovation Smart Grids. In last year, we published a country report of 2017 and including 17 countries' contribution and covering the topic about the policy, the market, and the technology, and state of art of them, and the future planning. So it's a very good delivers about the smart grids. And in next step, we have launched the 6 tasks covering the regional grid, distribution grid, microgrid, and cross innovation. So we have do a lot of international collaboration already. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So what you were touching upon was obviously that there will be lots of new market players entering into the energy system. There will be new technology, decentralized solutions will grow in importance, and most likely grid parity will be reached within the next few years. And is there something then in the market design that needs to be changed in order for that to happen? And that's kind of a question that is not only for the area of China, but for more a global outlook. And maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
No, happy to do so. And thanks for having the IEA here. And thank you very much to our Swedish and Danish and Nordic colleagues for hosting what I've found to be an excellent set of meetings. Not only the Mission Innovation and CEM plenaries, but all the side events, all the roundtables. Minister Bailan, thanks for your leadership personally, your team, other colleagues as well. It's been a phenomenal set of meetings.
I guess he wants an applause.
I'll do with gold bar later.
Good. I hope that was good. So let me just give 5 numbers just on the scale and potential of what we're talking about here, and then some thoughts, 5 thoughts as well on intelligent market design going forward from some of our IEA analysis. Just to give a sense of the scale of the grid as it exists currently, there's about 50 million kilometers of grid transmission lines out there. That would take you from here all the way to Mars if you stacked it up end to end. So it's a huge system of systems, if you will. So we're dealing with a really fundamental part. And electricity more generally is really at the heart of where energy globally is going as well. All our scenarios, whether climate scenarios or more status quo scenarios, show electricity increasing in terms of its importance. And the grid, and the smart grid in particular, is at the heart, if you will, of energy systems. So it's very important to be having this conversation. We did an analysis on digitalization and energy and tried to figure out, well, what's the scale of what we're talking about when we talk about smart grids potential into the future. One of the areas we looked at was smart demand response, really trying to figure out how households, appliances could really plug into smart grids and help balance with supply and demand a lot better. Our 2040 numbers on that, which I think are pretty conservative in some ways, are 1 billion households could be connected by smart demand response. That's 11 billion appliances all plugged in, available to be charged at various times depending on what the grid requirements are, matching supply and demand. Electric vehicles, we could have hundreds of millions of electric vehicles here quite soon. We could end up saving $100 billion US dollars to $280 billion US dollars in the not too distant future if we have smart charging, if electric vehicles can come into the grid with smart grid capabilities at different times of the day, again matching up with renewables, wind and solar in particular. We did a case study, 4th data point, we did a case study on the European Union and what smart grid technologies and some related storage can mean, going from a 7% curtailment rate in the 2040 timeframe to about a 1.4% curtailment rate, and huge cost savings there, decarbonization there as well. And then the fifth number, just to leave you with, is the scale of the potential and the need for investment going forward. We've got about, right now, about $1 billion invested globally in smart grid storage related technologies. That sounds like a lot of billions, a lot. I wish I had $1 billion US dollars. That would mean a lot to me. But that's only 1% of the overall investment in this space more generally. So we've still got a lot of investment going forward. So the question, what do we need on intelligent market design? What are the areas to focus on? They've been hit on many of these that I'll share, but just to emphasize. One is certainly innovation and experimentation. It's one thing to think about how these things will work in the abstract or in a laboratory or even in a computer simulation. It's another thing to actually test these out at scale in the real world with consumers not always being rational actors and not always doing, frankly, what we should always do in terms of incentive structures. So it's that sandboxing, that real world experimentation piece of it. Secondly, and there's great examples in France, in Denmark, in Germany, in China, really testing out things at scale. Again, it's one thing to do it in a small situation, it's another thing to really take it to scale, and you've got to scale these kinds of solutions going up. So really demonstrating that solutions at scale. Third is the new business models part of it. We did a digitalization and energy workshop bringing together about 150 actors, private sector actors, government actors a year ago. And we asked a question, a polling question to the group. A very smart group, very much involved in this industry, in this sector. We asked who are the big winners going forward in this kind of digitalization and energy space, specifically in electricity, but more generally. We had three options. One was established incumbents, utilities, other incumbent energy companies. Second category was big ICT companies, your Googles, your Microsofts, et cetera, of the world. And then the third one was new business models, new types of companies. And the overwhelming poll response from this very sophisticated group was new business models, new types of businesses really emerging to take advantage of this space. The aggregator model in particular is a really interesting business model. Getting the incentives right from the government side of things, the market design right, is absolutely critical to encourage and incent this kind of new business model, these new kinds of companies to be able to step forward, to make money, to bring decarbonization benefits, and to improve the system overall. Fourth is interoperability. What kinds of standards are there out there so communication, different devices can talk to each other, different parts of the grid can talk to each other, major problem going forward. And then fifth, we should be honest about the challenges associated with smart grids going forward, especially the increasing digitalization. You've got cybersecurity issues that need to be built in, cyber resilience needing to be built in from the get-go, privacy issues needed to be taken into account, how to deal with big data in ways that actually make sense. A lot of companies and governments are awash in big data, but they don't know what to do with it. So that's a real challenge as well. And I think forums like this, certainly ISGAN, the new Mission Innovation Challenge is very exciting, and thanks to China and India and Italy for their leadership on that particular initiative as well. There's a lot that we can learn from each other in these kinds of forums, and having these kinds of discussions where we can learn from each other. Certainly from the IEA side, happy to help be the convener and be the collector of best practices around the world to share. We've got a new smart energy systems technology roadmap that will be coming out next month. We've stopped calling it Smart Grid Technology Roadmap and called it Smart Energy System Technology Roadmap, just because it really deserves that broader framing, because this is really where the heart of everything comes together.
Are we now killing the Smart Grid name?
That's just the way we're doing it. I'm not saying everybody has to do that.
Maybe remember this day. Okay, thank you very much. And one of the things you touched upon was electricity and transport. Francisco, what would be, from an OEM perspective, your expectations, and now you really have the chance here to elaborate on that and really share your view in front of decision makers. What would be your expectations on the smart energy system in the future? What should we avoid, from your perspective, doing?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be in this.
Just, yeah. No.
You'll manage. You have a strong voice.
So thank you for inviting Nissan to this forum. I think for the first time in many years, I see a convergence of visions. converges here. I see that we are all now aligning our thinking on this world that needs to be powered by renewable sources, and in which every piece of hardware, every technology we have around for energy and transportation needs to be based in this carbon-free scenario. Right? So our role, looks like it's working now, good. Our role as a technology company is to make that happen, is to develop all of these pieces of technology that we need to achieve that world that is carbon-free. Right? So we are doing, with electric vehicles, we are now stepping into the storage for homes and buildings, and we are now also stepping into the distributed solar. Basically, it is time that we basically move from these pilots and discussions and great thinking to concrete actions, right?
So you will start to challenge the larger utility companies, is that what you're saying?
I mean, no, utility companies have a different role to play,
Okay.
right? And we were saying before that the cards of the game are going to be reshuffled, right? So you may get one, or you had one before and now you get nothing, right? So different players are going to come. Existing players need to evolve into a new role, into a new way of providing value to society, because at the end, this is what we are all doing, right? So we need to develop things, services, technologies that are all aligned to get to that world that needs to be efficient, need to be sustainable, right? So for me, the key change or the key challenge I see now is that we are really at this turning point in which we're going to have a massive amount of electric vehicles out there. We're going to have a huge amount of distributed batteries in the hands of people, right? So we're not talking about big battery systems that are being controlled by large utilities only, right? So every home is going to have its own storage. It's going to have its own sustainable generation. It's going to have its own electric car. So how do we build? That is happening now. It is happening now.
Everyone, we're full penetration of EVs or storage
I mean,
solutions.
I will ask even a wider question. Do we have a choice? Right? We don't have a choice. Right? So if we all want to keep living in this planet and we want our kids to be living in a better world than the one we got when we step into this, we have no choice.
Tell them that the decision needs to be made now, otherwise it will take maybe a little bit longer time.
I mean, not the decision and to be made now. The decision was to be made like a few years ago. Right? Now is the time to deliver. It's the time to move and to bring solutions, concrete solutions to the market that are affordable, that are reliable, and they get the big names of the industry behind, right? So this is what we are trying to do. What we realized when we launched the electric vehicle in 2011 is that there is a lot of inertia, right? So unfortunately, governments and large companies are not fast. So we all have very faithful thinking, but we live in a context within a framework that defines the speed and the processes that we can have. Right? So it takes time. So that's why it was very important that big governments and companies made the decision a few years before, because now it's time to bring things to the market and to make it accessible to the masses. Right? So no more pilot, please. Let's go and do the right thing, and let's do it now.
So you want to see some execution?
Yes, not me, I mean, we all, right? So we all want to see concrete things, no more discussion, no more pilots, just getting things in the hand of people, making concrete steps towards this future of sustainable economy.
Thank you. I know that NREL is looking at and working a lot with emerging markets. Would you say it's a similar kind of topics you would like to raise from that perspective in terms of market design and getting ready, starting with execution?
We do work in many markets, more than 40 deeply around the world, and maybe touching up to 100. Also in partnership with the IEA, ISGAN, and actually the power and Sweden, and the Power Partnership, which is a complementary initiative of the Clean Energy Ministerial. And I think it's really interesting to reflect, because the essence of the conversation is very similar in all of those environments. But the local conditions are incredibly different. Everything from the institutional framework of whether or not it's a parastatally owned, vertically integrated utility or a controlled industry, frankly, or a regulated or a deregulated one that's going through restructuring, et cetera. So we've just worked for 4 years with our counterparts in Mexico who have gone from a parastatally owned, vertically integrated utility to complete restructuring. Independent system operator, independent regulator, independent market monitor, and a long-term plan going forward. Developing a smart grid roadmap, regulatory roadmap, just developing in coincident with that a distributed generation roadmap, and launching into multiple auctions for variable renewable energy, as one example. But those are just CEM-related countries. There are other related countries, such as, well, India also a CEM country, but I can think of others, like New Zealand, that has gone down its own roadmap for restructuring and creating essentially distribution system operators. This same kind of paradigm is happening in different parts of the U.S., both at the bulk level. So I think we also kind of global to local. We also think about smart grids in terms of the bulk side, as well as all the way down to the distribution side. And so, you know, definitions will change, technologies will change, but the decision makers, the ministers, the regulators, they have to think of the whole thing. And so you can't band-aid an approach in the wholesale side at the expense of perhaps making a problem in the distribution side. And so I think that kind of experience across different countries is also really important. And so let me share a couple of examples that I think might be important in this regulatory sandbox. I think everyone is struggling with, and I'll put an OEM hat on the fundamental perspective that for a company to invent, to innovate, and to put a new market solution into the market, they have to be able to make money at it. They have to have a value proposition to provide services, but be paid for those services. And this is the key thing. So what are the policy mechanisms and the regulatory approaches that incent a company to innovate to bring more smart grid solutions in? So in PJM, eastern part of the United States, underneath a federal regulatory rule, they implemented what was called a demand response market. That could be served by large players, but in fact was mostly served by small aggregators who would go to your home and offer a retrofit of a small device, and then they would aggregate that up. That created in 2 years 10 gigawatts of demand response, about 10% of that market. They are remunerated for it because they're actually paid out of the capacity markets for reducing demand, as one example. There's another one which is actually already in process in New York, where they're trying to create a distribution system operator model, and it's called a non-wires alternatives. And this is actually promoting distributed generation, smart grid, distributed storage, including services oriented, where it may be a different quality of service that you're actually asking for if you are a stay-at-home person, or if you need home medical care, or if you need home security, things like that. And so it's kind of differentiating again into thinking about services, but the non-wires alternatives are positioned to actually be a replacement of investing in generation and transmission and the traditional one-way power system. So they're very much an enabling environment for innovative, smart solutions to come forward, which combine business models and technologies and services. So that's kind of a little bit of a landscape across of, there really are examples from around the world that are working, that are evolving, I should say. Many of them working, many of them still needing to improve even their own thinking. And I think that the forums like this, working through ISGAN and others, is a great place to share that. The CEM also bringing that forward. And recognizing that not one solution will fit all. It's very different. In India, for example, they actually promote frequency response and frequency regulation as a service and a product. That doesn't happen in many other markets, right? But that's because that's what they thought about. because that's really critical to the system operator. So many others that I could put forward. One of the most interesting things I think that we're seeing on the bulk side, and just to put one example down as NREL, is that the variable renewables now, because they're electrically controlled through a smart inverter, when they connect to the grid, they actually can provide advanced grid services. In electrical engineering terms, voltage, frequency, generation control, things like this, at a lower error rate in response to the request from the system operator than the traditional units can. And why? Because they're electric, they're dynamically controllable, et cetera. So this is a real paradigm shift, frankly, in terms of people used to think that renewables on the bulk side or in the distribution side were problematic. And now they're actually offering grid services and grid flexibility services. And again, they're looking for remuneration to be able to do that in more markets. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. So you touched a lot upon these smart new products, services that are very much discussed right now. Digitalization, new companies entering into markets, offering new solutions and services. One area that we talked about yesterday, global versus local, and if there are too many differences between local regulatory frameworks, will it then be difficult for technology companies to actually develop global products in a profitable way? If you look, for example, on smart meters, I know discussing with some smart meter vendors, they have been struggling reaching profitability in their businesses because the local adaptations needed. A smart meter in Norway is not the same requirements as in Sweden, or not the same requirements as in Texas, and not the same as in California. So I think maybe you can elaborate as a panel a little bit upon how can we help the market in terms of speed, in terms of developing a global potential market, so that these companies really can develop global solutions, or is it not at all interesting, and should they focus on local solutions instead? Long question. And maybe
let me do a short answer, and others can chime in. I think it's really important that businesses are also smart, that they're managed, that they design products that are adaptable to multiple different markets. So, I mean, we can work through the standards organizations, the IEEEs and the ISO, et cetera, but frequencies aren't the same in every market. Interconnection standards aren't quite the same. And frankly, with the emergence of smart devices, all of those products can be, frankly, software adaptable and software upgraded. This is one of the things that we've learned about smart meters, in fact, that if you were dumb doing it, your meter wasn't quite so smart. And it became out of date much too quickly. But the new ones actually are just like your Tesla cars and others. The software is all downloadable from the cloud. And so I think, again, evolving the business management cycle to be much smarter is a very good thing to be thinking about. And
probably they have to, because there are so different local requirements, so they have to be smart in the current situation we are in, utilities obviously as well. Valerie, you want to comment?
Yes, I want to say that in fact this challenge is also very interesting because smart grids are based on co-construction, co-building. So there are solutions like, for example, smart metering or microgrids that can be adapted to the different countries, but this is all the interest is to discuss with the utility in order to adapt it, and it will work only if both parts have brought enough innovation, enough expertise, and it cannot work if it's only one part who is imposing its model.
Good. So my last question, and Minister Baylan will be allowed to comment on that after. An answer, maximum 20 seconds. Will policymakers and regulators keep up with the technical development that we can see right now? Who dares to answer that one?
Well, I could try. I mean, it's not if they will or not, because we all have to. right? So is how they're going to do it. And linking to your previous question, we need to take into account a harmonization, right? So not every country needs to make different choice in terms of policy. Otherwise, it's going to make the massive deployment very complicated.
Thank you so much. Last comment.
So I don't envy the responsibility of policymakers, regulators, when it comes to these kinds of things. The trends happening on the digitalization space are incredibly fast and far-reaching. Internet traffic tripling over a period of 5 years. We've now got more cell phone subscriptions than we have people in the world, and the trends are just incredible, including in the developing world as well. So one thing we found when we did our digitalization and energy exercises, no one has this figured out. Some countries are further along, some countries have built up more capabilities. We've had 10 no regrets recommendations for policymakers in this space, but it's going to be a real challenge. This is one that I think ministers, others on their staff are really wrestling with, and hopefully we can learn from each other and be smart about this as we go along.
Thank you so much, and with that we thank the panel. And you can decide yourself if you want to stay some few minutes until the session ends, but I'd like to welcome up on stage again Minister Baylan to have some closing remarks. This panel. Not prepared, it seems like.
We'll stay, but we give you the floor.
Well, let me start by thanking the panel for a constructive discussion. I think listening to you really puts the focus on the difficulties, but also the great opportunities that we have. And Marie, just to answer your question, unfortunately, there is very few examples in history where we as policymakers have been before the technological development. We are usually lagging behind. An example that I like to share is the example of, did you know that most toasters today are connected? Do you know that? I didn't know that. You know how I found out? We got a report that one of the biggest overload attacks 2 years ago in the world, globally, it was like hitting a lot of countries at the same time. Toasters were the most used device for that overload. Did we know that?
I didn't know
I
that.
don't know. No. Not me either, but I found out that my toaster is connected. I'm not entirely sure why, but it is. So the example is that I think we are a bit behind. I'm not entirely sure it's a bad thing at this moment. We need this market dynamics. But in the end, we have to find a way of integrating this into our market models. Security issues will obviously, just like Dave Turk was highlighting, be an issue here, because I think in the end, one thing is with overload attacks, just imagine if you would have on a large scale people started controlling your energy system or electric system to hospitals or housing or whatever, that would create problems, bad confidence. The second one is, I think this is very powerful technology or set of technologies. Storage, digitalization, automation, electrification, coming all of it at the same time. And obviously we would love our citizens to do as we wish. Unfortunately, they don't. Let me give you an example. Our Norwegian neighbors, they are famous for having been investing in EVs for a very long time. And one of the thoughts about that was storage in that capacity could also help the grid, help with our problems with the capacity. I mean, it turned out that that was the thought of the policymakers and maybe the utilities. But what do you think the Oslo citizens did with their EVs? Well, they connected their EVs when they came home after work and started to charge to load. At the same time, they started everything else in the household. What did you think that did with demand? Well, during a normal peak, it just went even higher. So my point is that I think we need to find a way of making this kind of systems, either with incentives within the market design or with automation sometime, make them also compatible with all the objectives that we have and meeting a lot of the challenge we have with climate change and so on, intermittent production and so on. This is all possible. It is possible, and it is also becoming more and more economical viable. And I think a lot of the issues that you had are in that sense very wise. So, dear friends, I think we have a couple of initiatives here. I think there are a lot of good things, benefits gained by that. And from our point of view, we will push for even more international collaborations. There are a lot of things that we could learn from each other, both good things happening, mistake here and there, not in Sweden, obviously, not in other parts of the world.
Of course.
Because I think more integrated systems with smarter devices and services will be a benefit to our consumers in the end and for the environment. So thank you very much for joining us all here today. And there is only one thing we could continue to do. Continue to work with each other, find the best solutions. Sometimes we'll make a mistake here and there, even in Sweden. But in the end, I think it will create a totally new energy system that is reliable, that is also affordable, and in the end, much greener than we have today. Thank you very much for the panelists and for joining us today.
Thank you. And thank you for that. And now I would like to welcome again Karin and Maria up on stage.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks to the panel. Thanks to Minister Baylan, and thanks to everybody for us. I think it's a really exciting discussion. We have received a lot of interesting input for our future work, but we are not closing because we have been talking about the importance of doing things, practical experience and doing things in reality. And that's what ISGAN Award is about. So we're very soon coming back to ISGAN Award, but before...
Yes. I just also want to say, yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Baylan, and also to this panel. I think this has been a very constructive discussion and a really good finalization of those 3 days where we have discussed this topic on intelligent market design and smart grids. So thank you very much, and with that I leave it to you so you can continue.
Yes, and I will ask Minister Baylan to stay here. We will have a short introduction, and we're very happy to have you to participate in our ISGAN Award ceremony and hand over the awards to the finalists. So, but before we do that, I will ask Anne here from our ISGAN co-secretariat in Korea, from KSGI, to make a short description of what our award is about. And then we have Valérie Gansé, and she has been a member of the jury, so she will say a few words from the jury perspective before we get to the ceremony. So,
okay.
Adam.
So welcome to the award ceremony. My name is Aram An, and I'm the co-secretary of ISGAN, as well as the awards of administrator of awards competition. So for those who are not familiar with the awards of competition, awards of excellence recognize excellence in innovation, integration, transformation of smart grid systems. And each year we focus on different themes to highlight the critical aspects of smart grid projects. With this, this year we launched our 4th annual competition with the theme of flexibility. And with the number of projects from more than 10 countries, we have recognized 7 projects this year. So with that, we are here for we are now here to celebrate the winning project today. And congratulations to all the winning projects, and I look forward to the outstanding performance in their work going forward. Thank you.
So I am Valérie Loxnar. I'm the managing director of Think Smart Grids, which is a French association gathering 100 members, but also I was a regulator and also the French state through the Ministry of Industry. And I'm here to represent the GSGF because there is a partnership with ISGAN and GSGF in order to provide experts to study the different files. We had about 30 this year of a very high level, very customer oriented because and flexibility oriented because it was the topic of our awarding. So just a few words about GSGF. So GSGF today is chaired by Rishi Kumar, who is also the president of the Indian Smart Grid Forum. And GSGF gathers today about 10 platforms all over the world, among them USA with Gridwise, but also GSCA, Japan, with Mr. Takashi Omote from NEDO, who is the vice chairman of GSGF. And we work also with Korea and Mexico and other countries. So the mission of GSGF is to facilitate collaboration of national and international smart grid platforms, foster exchange of ideas and best practice on smart grids, and cooperation between public and private sectors. So since many years now, GSGF is supporting ISGAN Award of Excellence Organization, providing experts. And on top of that, I must say that GSGF designates a special award that I will transfer at the end of the ceremony.
Okay, very good and interesting news. So, with this introduction, let's move to the award ceremony. I think we'll probably ask all the finalists to step forward, and
So first, maybe we will call for the winner.
Yeah. Should we start? Yeah.
So,
Do as you wish.
sorry. So
Okay. We have the finals, most of the finals in the room, don't we?
yes, we do.
Shouldn't we bring them forward? I think that would be very nice. The finals.
Yeah, I
Just
think we ask them
please.
all to step forward.
Yes.
Just speed up the
That
process.
would be very nice. Okay. We have most of our finalists here on the stage and the winner. The winner has been selected among 14 nominations from 10 different countries. The evaluation has been conducted by the award jury panel that consists of 10 smart grid experts from around the world. And now, dear friends, very exciting. It's time to let you know the winner of this year. I've done this once before. It was in Mexico. It was my first time. I was very nervous at the time. I'm very stable, as you can see. Now it's time to let you know the winner of this year's ISGAN Award. And the winner of the 2018 ISGAN Award of Excellence is the drum. Coordinating Power Control by Sustainable Innovation from Sweden. Congratulations. Let me just read the motivation. You have managed to develop a cooperative structure that involves innovation hubs, entrepreneurs, investors, public sector and companies, and your company's approach in using smart grids to improve flexibility in the power system stands out as best practice example for the rest of the world. Congratulations. That was the motivation from the jury, so just that you know. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I want also to congratulate the other finalists. It's from Korea, KEPCO, from Germany, Energy, from Germany again, Druag Nets, from Sweden, E.ON Energidistribution, from Italy, Enel, from Canada, Hydro-Quebec Research Institute. An applaud for all of our finalists. Well done. Winner, not finalist, winner is from Sweden. Very good. Congratulations.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
our picture. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tack Ida. Tack.
Okay, we'll give. Can I? Congratulations. Very well done.
So Mr. Zongin here is the general manager from KEPCO for its project Smart Grid Control. Next one is Mr. Ulrich Dirkmann,
from
project
Germany.
member of Smart Operator of Energy SE in Germany for its project Smart Operator.
Well, very well.
Thank you
Congratulations.
very much.
Thank you.
The next one is Mr. Manuel Jesus de Telechea Suarez, who is head of stakeholder engagement for the NO, Global Infrastructure and Network, for its project named Open ADR for Chile. And this is Mrs. Stima Albin, communication manager from E.ON Energidistribution from Sweden, with her project Local Energy System with Customer Flexibility. And I will have also the privilege, to give to Mrs. Albin the special award from GSPF for the excellency of the work. Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations.
A warm applause both for our finalists and winners.
You will hear short presentation from the project, but I think that is a wish for a photo with all the finalists and Minister Bylands, if it's possible.
Yes, but without the microphone, I think. I'm not the best with the microphone. We are making the world a better place.
Yes. Yeah, and now we jump.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Ja, visst.
So, I would ask we're going to have a short presentation about the project before lunch.
Okay. Thank you. And the short presentation is extremely short, or the long version. Well, we started this project in 2014, and it's a fascinating feeling to stand here, having EAA telling the billions of devices connecting to the whole grid. China is showing trillions of watt hours in electricity, and we are in Upplands Energi north of Uppsala in a small grid where Harald von Slippenbach is the head of chairman for the little condominium organization of 60 villas. It's a huge scale, and it's a fascinating combination of these systems. When we install a heat control system, a small device on his heat pump, he's accelerated. And I go there for a Swedish fika and talking about this system. And I say, well, when you have this in your home, you're actually changing the world. And so, what? Yeah, because now your automatic system in your home is part of the total control in the system of making the whole world renewable. And when we done this towards 250 houses to 350 houses, scaling it up slowly, but it's making progress. And when we now, this spring, on the 28th of February, had a really cold morning, the little grid, the DSO, had a peak going over its subscription, a half megawatt. And that cost them 140,000 Swedish, 1,000 divided by 10, perfect in euro. Quite costly for a 14,000 customer-owned organization having a grid together. With these 250 pumps that we had activated, we had already removed 1.5 megawatts in that grid, which cost them almost 500,000, which they didn't need to pay. And that was 250 villas north of Uppsala in Sweden. If we scale that to Sweden, we have water-based heating systems in villas and small houses in the comparison to 6 gigawatts of flexibility. We heard the PGM project in the US. It's suddenly just there with the combination. And why should the houses have it? Well, they have an app to the house. They are able to turn down the heat when they're gone. They know that the house is okay. They have a 10% energy efficiency. They don't need to have tariff rebates and so on. They just jump on. They buy a new radiator. They buy a new thing, and it's connected. And it helps the world. Perfect. I don't need 1 crown back when it sort of not created heat for an hour. But that little hour is a total game changer in the peak management. So the combination in our project is to get all these small devices connected, get the companies that are actually producing them to talk to each other. What happens when you have 10 different companies in the same area having heat pump control? And they have the same software and the same default settings, and they will take the same decision regarding the electricity price. 100,000 in a small area, well, that's quite problematic. You need all these starting to collaborate, starting to finding the areas, perhaps not markets, but APIs together. Is it a global API or is it the local API? Well, it can be all different. And that's what we're trying in these projects. We're getting these together, we're trying it. We are on the edge of regulations, because when we turn off these heat pumps as a grid, together with the grid owner, but it's a private company having things in a home, so it's not regulated at all. And when we removed these 1.8 megawatt hours in this morning in February, a retailer didn't sell that. So some retailer was imbalanced. And we induced that. Oh, then I've been a bit longer. Well, that's more or less what it is. It's fascinating to connect the little Harald von Slippenbach up to the world of IEA and the whole grid. And that's the solution. All aboard. Let's go.
So, and now I will call Mr. Dongjin Koom, the General Manager from KEPCO. in order to say a few words about his project. Please, Mr. Fuss.
Hello everyone. I am General Manager Dong Jing-kyun, in charge of smart grid business of KEPCO. KEPCO is responsible for the whole area of the Korea power industry. Currently, KEPCO is making utmost effort to lead the first industrial revolution and facilitate the digital transformation of the power grid. I truly believe that smart grid will play a critical role here. Therefore, KEPCO will strengthen its cooperative relationship with ISGAN and work harder to make meaningful contribution in this field of smart grid. Finally, I'd like to extend my appreciation to staff member of ISGAN for giving us this honorable opportunity today. Thank you.
And now we will hear a few words from Mr. Ulrich Dirkmann, who has been working on the Smart Operator project for Energy SE.
Yeah, so thank you very much. In the name of Energy, our project team, Smart Operator, and our partners, that we have been selected as a finalist to the 2018 ISGAN Award of Excellence. It is a great honor for us, for Energy Group, the project, and our partners to receive this international acknowledgement by ISGAN. And the background for the Smart Operator is our vision that is to develop and roll out intelligent grids to provide in our distribution grids an answer to the megatrends decarbonization and decentralization by using the potential of digitalization and algorithms consistently. So we create the prerequisite for the success of the energy transition. So that's the vision behind. And the Smart Operator project was a non-funded project by Energy together with two affiliates, Lechwerke and Westnetz in Germany, industry and university partners. So we also had two universities on board. And the project focuses on testing the benefits of smart and flexible grid devices and smart households in several grids with regard to the increasing grid integration of renewable electricity in Germany. It balances generation, consumption, and maintains the power quality. The autonomous self-learning algorithm controlled 4 low-voltage grids in the field test phase of this project. And by load shifting and voltage optimization, the local grids were able to absorb more or less 35% more electricity from locally generated renewable energy. But we are also proud that the Smart Operator is not only research and development, but is actually doing his job in fully integrated grids. We will have a rollout in several grids of Westnetz very soon. And we are actually adapting the Smart Operator to medium voltage. So we started with low voltage. We work on standardized interfaces, and we already offer the Smart Operator as a product on the market. So we had some interesting discussions already. For any further information, please contact us, the Energy website, or just take a brochure. So you will find all the information in detail in this brochure. Thank you very much.